Okay, there we go. Now we've got the right recording going. Awesome. So, welcome, guys. You made it to day one. It's the beginning of a fun and exciting and long journey. So I have first things first. We're just going to cover basic Zoom etiquette. Initially, we were thinking that we would have all the students open Zoom on their computers and then unmute. But it sounds like because there's decent audio quality in the conference room, having me remote and just having the mic open the whole time shouldn't be a problem. With that said, if you have questions, by all means, stop me. I will get on a roll. I will talk for the whole 3 hours if you don't and drive you guys nuts. So definitely like raise your hand or just interrupt me if I don't see your hand up. And Karen should be able to help with that as well. So if you guys have any questions, feel free just interrupt me and shout them out as you have them. Yes.
Just for this account, it's asking for like a joining code.
Sorry,
Uh,
I cannot hear you. You're gonna have to be just a little bit louder.
I signed up for a Canvas account. It's asking me for a joining code, and I checked my email for it. Nothing's showing up.
Let me see what I can do there. Um, this is our first time using Canvas as our learning management system, and so I am just trying to find where that code is. Give me 1 second. Uh, Okay, I have the join code. I'm actually going to pause the recording so it's just not on YouTube and then I can share it with you. So you should be able to get in. Are you able to see that link in Slack?
Throw it in Zoom as well, Max, if you wouldn't mind, just in case
Yep.
Zoom either. I think everyone is, but
Also just dropped it into Zoom. Awesome. Great. Any other questions? Anyone else struggling to get into Canvas? It looks like we've got four students who still need to get in. Yeah.
If they forgot their password to get into their laptop, what's the quickest way to reset it and retrieve it?
I believe it's hack upstate all lowercase unless you've changed it.
Changed it, forgot it. So what's the easiest way to do like a whole reset?
There's no real easy way. Karen, I'll Slack you the link for that. It's not a quick fix, but maybe you can look through that article and see if you can get any of that working. Any other questions? Has everyone been able to get into Canvas and at least seen a couple links on that homepage?
Yes.
Awesome. Great. So the main doc that we'll be working off of, and we're going to try and do this almost every day in class, there should be a link that says W1D1 outline. if you want to go ahead and pop that open, and everyone should have access there, but I just want to do a really quick rundown. I know first days are always notorious for being called like the syllabus days. The good news is because we have already gone through the whole syllabus, a lot of this stuff is stuff that we can go through pretty quickly. And then from there, we'll be able to actually dive in and actually start talking about the tech and stack and all of that stuff. Any questions before I jump in there? Cool. All right. So first things first, the way we do grading almost across the entire course is on a rubric of a 1, 2, or 3, right? 1 is below expectations, 3 is above expectations, and 2 is what you can guess, meeting expectations. With that said, when you get a 2 meeting expectations, you shouldn't ever be disappointed, right? Meeting expectation means you're nailing it, you're doing exactly what we hoped you're doing, and you're just cruising along in the program, right? So this isn't like one of those situations where you're like, oh, I have a C and I'm not doing well in the program. If you have a 2, you're doing great, right? So the 2 main places we will use that rubric is obviously for homework assignments, in which I'll go over all of that in Canvas in just 1 second. And then the other places we give you a weekly feedback score. And you'll get that score on Monday or at the latest Tuesday, as well as some individual feedback if you need it, right? And so that's just our chance to be able to check in with you guys and say, hey, maybe you're falling behind a little bit, maybe you don't know it. Let's just touch base and kind of see how that's going. So I know we touched on that on the in the student acceptance agreement a little bit, but the main thing there is just hammering home, like, do not be disappointed if you're not getting 3s, right? The 3s are really reserved for like, hey, you really went above and beyond on this assignment. And there will be some assignments that you can't even get a 3 on them, right? So just keep in mind, if you're getting 2s throughout the whole program, you're doing great. With that said, we will be doing attendance tracking, whether it's in person or if you join in remotely, that's completely fine. We'll see you remotely and take attendance for you that way. So if you do plan to miss a class or ever be late for a class, just shoot us a quick message and say, like, hey, something came up, or I'm going to be 20 minutes late today, or whatever it is. That open communication just really helps us understand, what you guys are going through. So just a heads up that we do track attendance. One thing that we wrestled with in the first 2 cohorts was our organization of how do we keep track of this program, because we're doing so many different things in it, right? So we had modules, and some modules were only a week long, some modules were 3 weeks long, and then we got into this like, okay, we're on day 5. Does that mean we're in week 2, or where did we net out? So you'll see 3 letters in front of almost any number in front in Canvas. That's a W, a D, and an A. The A stands for assignment, right? So we're going to sequentially number all of our assignments, and that way, if you say, hey, I'm having trouble on this assignment, you can just call that assignment A4, and we know exactly what assignment you're talking about and can help you on it. On top of that, all of our resources will be organized into W&D, week and day. And so what that means is if you want to find notes for next week's class that takes place on Tuesday, you know that you can go to W2D2 and find all of the resources related to that class, right? So if you go into Canvas, you should already see some of that starting to take shape. So let me share my screen here. And you should be able to see, let me switch to the student.
One other, Max, if I can just interrupt you really quick. So for those that maybe sitting near the back or may not have best vision, you can also like follow along via the Zoom link in the calendar invite. So you can basically have this on your screen if you like. And also one thing, Max, just if you wouldn't mind just like blowing up your screen really big whenever you're, and Karen too, if you can make that like full screen as well, just for Is that a little better? Can folks generally see that? And if not, you can always pull up the Zoom link as well and, just put Max on mute and follow along that way. Does that make sense, everyone?
Yeah,
It automatically goes to full screen.
That's fine, Karen.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you join the Zoom link from in class, just make sure you stay muted, but I would encourage you to join because we're going to be doing a lot of screen sharing. And even when I'm there in person for classes, I'm still going to be on Zoom and I'm still going to be sharing my screen. So just getting in the habit of joining even when you're in person, because there will be time that we're working on code and we've got the browser window open and there's just like a lot going on. So I would encourage you to join on Zoom, just so that you can kind of follow along with that screen share. So in Zoom, I'm sorry, in Canvas, you should see this W1D1. That's going to be kind of our naming nomenclature everywhere. And then if we go into assignments, you'll also see assignment 1, 2, and 3, and then the day that was assigned. So week 1, day 1. That will all coordinate with, if we go back to the home and go into the schedule and YouTube links, you will see there is a whole schedule in here, week 1, week 2, week 3, and then the day, right? So Monday's day 1, Tuesday's day 2, and then you can get to the outline right from here. So we're just trying to cross-reference everything, and as developers, we latch on to our unique identifier system. And so you will see a lot of that not only in Canvas and YouTube, but also when we start organizing files on our computer, we'll start breaking everything down by week and day. It may sound like I'm really hammering home a point here that's like a really easy concept, but you would be shocked at how many resources come out of this system, where if you don't have that right kind of on day 1, you're going to get lost in all of your code and all of your files and all of that stuff. So that's just a quick rundown. I am going to pop this open in full screen. This is our overall schedule. This will show you kind of who's teaching the course, who the TA is. If you ever need to go back and review things, we will be updating this at the end of every class with the YouTube link, whether there was a workshop guest, anything like that. So while the calendar invites are super helpful to have the time set aside in your calendar, being able to access this link and just jump back in to reference things will also be super helpful. And so again, if you go to the home screen there or you go down to modules, you'll see there's this general resources section, and the schedule and YouTube links is the thing that I had open there. Take a breath. Any questions there? Cool. All right. So next step, and this is going to be your first hands-on thing. I know at kickoff, I asked you guys to install Zoom, VS Code, and Slack. You'll want to make sure that you have Slack at least on your computer. And I would also encourage you to install it on your phone just so you don't miss any notifications. The phone install is definitely completely optional. Don't feel obligated to do that. But we're going to do a quick rundown in Slack of an overview, just in case you've never used Slack before. Before we do that, though, we want to make sure that everyone knows that they can join the Zoom room and also that they can share their screen, because next week, when we are fully virtual, the number one way we will be able to help you guys and get you unstuck is if you can share your screen. And on the Mac, there are all kinds of crazy privacy steps in order to share your screen. So what I'm going to ask everyone to do right now, and this may get crazy because only one person can share their screen at the same time, but I'm going to ask everyone to join that Zoom link from the calendar invite, for next week. I will also share it in Slack, and I'm going to share it in the CIC Livestream C3 channel. And that channel is really meant to be our go-to place to just dump links in, right? So whatever happens live during class, there are often times that like, I want to share something with you guys, or you want to share a quick code snippet, and it makes no sense out of context, but because we're all in class together, it will make more sense. So what I'm going to do is drop that link in that CIC live stream channel. And then if you guys could start just joining that Zoom room, and down at the bottom of the screen, there should be a green share screen button. Whoever wants to do it first is welcome to do so. But what it's going to do is it's going to ask you to go into system preferences. Once you're in system preferences, you should see a screen that looks like this. What you are going to do is click on this little lock down at the bottom, enter whatever your password is for your laptop. If you've changed it, it's fine. If you haven't, the default is hack upstate. You're going to go ahead and enter your password. You're going to scroll down to screen recording and click on that, and then scroll down on this list and make sure Zoom has a little check mark. So I'm going to just take a moment there, let you guys get hands-on, get that set up. And if it works, I'll actually start to see your screen in the Zoom room. If you have any questions, yep, go ahead, Doug.
Link for the Zoom, but where do I find the passcode?
If you click on the link, it should it shouldn't make you enter the passcode. But if you do need the passcode, I will dump it in. Zach, it looks like you are all set there. So you can just stop sharing your screen and you are good to go.
You're welcome.
There should be a stop share button, Zach, at the top of your screen or the bottom of the screen. There you go. You got it. Also,
Max,
yes.
did you say that? So am I going in a different Zoom meeting than the one that I'm in right now?
No, the one that you're in right now is fine to just share your screen from.
Okay. Okay.
Is everybody good with connecting?
Yeah, Markel, what you're going to do is once you get into Zoom, which it looks like you're already in, there should be a share screen button at the bottom of the screen. Right towards the center of it, that's a green button. You're going to click on that, and it may ask you what you want to share. Or it may ask you to go into system preferences. If it asks you what you want to share, you want to click on desktop 1 and hit share. That should take you, and it should say, allow permissions in system preferences. So when you do, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I am really confused. All right, so on here, not on the regular Zoom, but as soon as I got to the link, it said join. You said from there.
Yeah, so the Zoom meeting that you're in right now, go ahead and hit share screen down at the bottom.
Oh, now it's green. I'm sorry.
Cool. Yeah, you may need to jiggle your mouse over the Zoom application, and that should get the share screen button to pop up at the bottom of the screen. Is it Scotia? Am I pronouncing that right? You're sharing your screen, so you're all set. You can go ahead and stop. Yep, good to go. I promise I will get much better with names. It's easier to learn them in person. Unfortunately, it will be a remote for the first couple weeks. It looks like kind of hard to tell who's sharing your screen from my side, but whoever just started sharing their screen, you've made it in all right, so you can go ahead and stop the share. Perfect. Good work, Stephanie.
Could you one more time Privacy settings. To share.
Yep. So privacy settings should look something like this. If the lock is locked in the bottom left and says click the lock to make changes, you're going to go ahead and click on that and enter your password. It will be hack upstate if you have not changed it. And then you're going to go to screen recording over here on the left. You may need to scroll down to get there. If you're new to a Mac, you can use 2 fingers on your trackpad to scroll up or down. You don't have to get the scroll bar. And then over here on this right side, you're going to scroll down and make sure that Zoom is checked off. And once it is, you can go ahead and lock everything up down here. And then go back into Zoom and try your screen share again.
Power outlets and whatnot.
Doug, you're in, good to go. So go ahead and stop your share. Perfect. Probably about a third of the way there. Tiffany, you're in. You are good to go. If you do have that window up that says Open System Preferences, you can just hit Open System Preferences and then close out of it. Just make sure you don't hit the Deny button. That's the last thing that we want to do. Anyone stuck anywhere? Whoever just started sharing your screen, I did not catch the name before it flashed up on the screen, but you are sharing and you're good to go to stop. Christy, you are good to go. I know this seems so trivial, but once we go fully remote, having this done now, and now that it's set up in person, will make it 10 times easier on Monday when you get stuck somewhere, and you can just show us where you're stuck. So, anyone need help? Everyone feel like they've got their share screen working and have tested it in Zoom?
Does anyone come with pause? If you are, that's okay.
So I think everybody's, pretty much has shared their screen.
Still trying to figure this out, Karen.
Chaz, you're in. Good to go. Anyone else stuck? Anyone at home who is stuck and needs help, feel free to just unmute in the Zoom room and ask questions.
The green.
Make sure you mute yourself if you're in person.
We good to go? Going once, going twice. Sold to hybrid classes. Okay. The other 2 applications that we need installed are VS Code and Slack. If you have not downloaded them, please do. The one thing I will note on Slack is you can sign into Slack in the web browser, but that is not going to allow for native applications. So what you should really do is make sure that you have Slack downloaded and installed to the point where you can see the little Slack icon down in your taskbar. So if you have not done that, go ahead and take a couple minutes. If you just Google download Slack, it should take you right to that link. You can also get it from the Mac App Store if you prefer. Sometimes that gets a little hairy with having to sign into an Apple ID, which you can absolutely do, but definitely make sure that you've got Slack installed. You will know if Slack is installed. I'm actually going to share my Slack window. you'll know Slack is installed because like there's no, hack-upstate.slack.com in the nav bar. This just looks like an entirely dedicated application, and that's because it is. This is downloaded, added to my applications folder and running that way. So the beginning of class, you're always going to want to pop open Slack because we're going to be using this CIC live stream C3 channel to just dump things in, right? So when someone goes, oh, can you send me that link? Or, oh, my code isn't working at this snippet. This is kind of our go-to spot to be able to get in and start sharing resources together. So you will see that I am involved in quite a few channels over here on the left. The CIC livestream C3 is limited to just you guys. The public never sees that, so you never have to worry about sharing a snippet of code that you wouldn't want someone to see down the road or anything like that. Feel free to use that. The difference between this and the CIC Student C3 channel is that this channel is meant to be more about announcements. It's about, you could ask questions in here. It's more of things where you would consider them a message, right? But if you, that's compared to the live stream C3 channel, which is more of like a, hey, I asked a question about this and here's the code that goes with it, right? So one is more formal, so to speak, and then the other one is just like, hey, I just need a place to dump this and so Max can see the code quickly, or he has a Zoom link or whatever it is. So that's the difference between the channels. And you would be surprised at how much you benefit from separating them out. So just keep in mind your audience and make sure that you're posting in the right channel if you have not used Slack before. With that said, there is also the area for direct messages down here. So if you hover over this word that says direct messages, you're going to get a little plus there. You can click on that plus and it's going to open up this message where you are able to send, you're able to type in a direct message to, let's say I want to message Karen. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. It's going to pop it open here. And down at the bottom, I can say, hey, Karen, thanks for TAing week 1. So if you are already a Slack master, feel free to, just keep going on. If you would like a little practice, feel free to open up a direct message to me, and that's how you could report like, hey, if I'm late to a class or whatever it may be, you could just come in here, shoot me a DM, and I always have my Slack open, maybe not 24 hours a day because believe it or not, I do need to sleep, but other than that, I tend to be online on Slack very frequently. And I also have my notifications set to pause when I go to sleep. So 24 hours a day, you can shoot me a message here, and I will either see it when I'm back online or chances are be able to help you. So if you're stuck on this one little homework problem and you really need help getting through it, just shoot me a message in a direct message, right? Or just post it in the student C3 channel and say, I'm stuck on this. Can anyone help me out? Chances are someone else was probably stuck at that same point and may be able to help you through it. So 3 most important channels and features in Slack are going to be your CIC Student C3, your CIC Live Stream C3, and then also your direct messages down at the bottom. And what this will also allow you to do is get access to our entire instructor and TA network, in addition to Jesse and pretty much everyone involved with Hack Upstate, right? So if you really connected with a guest speaker and wanted to shoot them a thank you note and ask them, an additional question that popped in your head, chances are you would be able to find them on Slack and send them a DM from there. So for virtual and asynchronous communication, Slack is the go-to resource for Hack Upstate. And from this point forward, we probably won't be sending you any additional emails because 99% of our communication that isn't in person will be happening over Slack. So super important to get comfortable with this tool now, because when we go remote, it will be used even more. Gonna take a moment there. Does anyone have questions about Slack?
No.
Awesome, thank you. Any questions about that? I believe everyone was able to get into Slack actually prior to class starting today, which is a huge thing. Glad everyone was able to get in there. I cannot stress enough the importance of having the desktop app installed and make sure notifications are working. Because just getting into the web interface, which I can show you. If when you go to Slack and it looks like this, even Slack themselves are saying, hey, the Slack app is going to be much better if you download it. But if you notice here, it looks very, very similar. And you might have a black bar down here that says Slack needs permission to enable desktop notifications. But the major thing up here is if you see app.slack.com in your URL, and you see tabs up at the top, you're in the wrong Slack. Definitely download it from there. So if you just do a search for download Slack and go to Slack downloads, just make sure that you are on the Mac version of it. I'm not quite sure why it took me to Windows. Download from Slack. Go to slack.com/downloads, and then you should have a download button right here to get that downloaded, and then make sure you have it installed as well. Okay, rolling right along here. For note-taking and sharing of resources, this class is not a competition, right? So when you guys are taking notes, if you find that there's that one student who takes notes really well, ask them to share it with the class. There is nothing wrong with that. Even working on assignments, right? We don't want you turning in the exact same assignment, but if you find that like you're really in a groove with another student and that you want to work on homework together, that is completely fine with us, right? This is not a competition. This is not, this is a tough thing to do. And one of the benefits of code, careers in code is going through this as a community, right? And building that sense of, hey, we're all working on the same thing together, right? So we will have group projects where you will be working with a couple other people to get something done. And that's not just because you go, oh, I hate group projects. It's because in the workforce, chances are you're not going to be a software developer who exists in a vacuum, right? You're going to be working with other software developers. So developing those skills now are so important. So note-taking is going to be a must, as is going back and re-watching some of these classes, which happens more frequently, especially as we start ramping up on more and more technical concepts. So feel free to ask each other for help, to share notes with each other, do whatever you would like. If there's anything that we can do to facilitate that, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to get that started. One thing we talked about doing, and I don't think we have started quite yet, is basically a back channel. Basically, hack upstate, staff, parents, whoever you want to do it, the keep out sign on the door. We encourage you guys to have a channel in Slack where it's only students, right? And so you guys can just dump something in and be like, I've got no idea what Max is talking about. Am I alone here? And so, feel free to use Slack and keep us out of the loop and only come to us, if there's something that needs to be changed there. But definitely feel free to share notes and don't feel like you are cheating or doing anything like that. Everyone learns differently, and someone may have a better understanding of what I'm trying to teach. And if you can share that with a fellow student, by all means, please do.
So cohort 1 and cohort 2, we set up our own Slack channel, and it was just the students. Jesse wasn't in it. None of the TAs, none of the instructors were in it. And it was so that we could communicate with each other to say, hey, does anybody understand this without, I saw you were actually doing this in class. Can you help me out with that? It's a great thing. And it's also a good place to bitch about if Max is, or I'm doing something wrong, like, God, that Karen, she's such a bitch. I can't stand her. It's a good place to kind of do that kind of stuff. Because you'll have a few different teachers. Yes, most of it's Max. You're going to have different TAs along the way, but it's a good way for you guys to stay together and build your own little community and become your own little family. And he's right about watching the videos. The nice thing about going back, you can stop the YouTube videos at certain points And, you know, if he's writing some code and he whips through something, you can say, all right, I want to try this. You watch it again, you stop the video, you try it yourself first. If you can't get it, you go back, you watch it again, and then you're like, oh, that's the step that I missed. Stop the video, do it, and then you're moving on your way. I did it a lot.
I have a question. The YouTube videos, I've gotten so many emails in the past couple of weeks. Did we get a link to a YouTube channel where these videos will be posted?
If you go onto YouTube, I mean, we can post that. I don't have it at the moment. It's Hack Upstate's channel, and you'll see cohort 1 should be there. Cohort 2 and cohort 3 will be there as they come along. You can watch any of them.
So three places you can get to them. One, Karen's Way is completely fine. The only problem with going through the Hack Upstate channel is that they aren't particularly well organized, and YouTube doesn't really make it easy for you to organize it. So if you know what class you want, you can just go to YouTube, do a search for Hack Upstate, and then type in the code for the class, right? So week 1, day 1 is W1D1. If you want Thursday's class, it's going to be W1D4. That's the first way to get to them. Second way to get to them is in Canvas. In Canvas, if you go to the week 1, day 1 outline or whatever course that you want, you will see that there is a table up at the top and it's got a blank cell for YouTube. As soon as the video is up on YouTube, maybe 2 hours after class is done, because it takes some time to convert, there will be a link to that day's YouTube video right in here, as well as a computer-generated transcript of what got said in that meeting. And that can be really helpful for when you go, oh, class was 3 hours, I completely forgot, you know, what was said there. You can go into the transcript and just do a search for the keyword and hopefully get the timestamp, and then you can click on that timestamp and it will jump you to that point in the audio, or you can take that timestamp information, fast forward the YouTube video to that point and go from there. So the YouTube link and the transcript link will definitely be live, let's say by noon the following day of class, but 90% of the time it will be live an hour or two after class is done. So that's the second place to find them. The third place to find them is if you go back to modules. In here, it will say schedule and YouTube links. If you pop that open, you will see a placeholder for a YouTube link. We will also put the YouTube link directly in that cell. So 3 different ways you can get to it. May seem like overkill now, but when you have, I think I did the math and we have 96 classes total. When you've got 96 classes worth of YouTube links, being able to navigate them and find the exact one you want is super important, and something that I hope that we do better in cohort 3 with this system than we did in cohort 2. Any other questions on that? Karen, what percentage of students would you say that you saw using the YouTube links?
I'm not sure about cohort 1 because we kind of were doing our own thing, but I would say probably 80%, I think, use the YouTube links in cohort 2 because they were, I mean, I always had somebody different asking for, you know, hey, I don't remember this class, or I need to find this. Do you remember what class it was? You know, so it takes a minute and here it is.
Yeah, and that's why we're hammering this home so much, is that things are going to start going fast, right? And there will be times where you're like, well, I got it all in class, and now that I drove home, I couldn't tell you what today's topic was on. We covered so much information, right? And so that's why I hammered that home at kickoff, is that, like, this isn't just, oh, 3 hours in class a night and I'm done. And it's not even, oh, let me add an hour on top of that and I can get homework done. There is that just sink-in time, right? Where we cover so much material, you need 2 minutes just to review all of that and let it sink in and hear it for a second time. And so that's why the YouTube links are so important. And Doug, I'm glad you asked, like, how do we get to that? You can get to it either from that day's outline and that YouTube link right there. you can get to it through the schedule and YouTube links. Or if you just go to YouTube and do a search for Hack Upstate, you can go to our channel, and our channel has all the videos in here, including, you can see all of cohort 2 is also in here, and dated as well. So we'll be better about getting that class's code, the W4 day 2, whatever, into the videos, so you'll be able to find them easier directly from YouTube. But hopefully through Canvas, you'll be able to find them as well.
You also don't have to stick just to these videos through YouTube. You can look up other people. You know, you can type in the subject that you want. You know, if you're doing HTML, CSS, if you put that in YouTube, you'll get a ginormous list of different people. There's might still be resource of, and I'll have to look, but from cohort 2 of different channels that people recommended that were good to go to learn other things like that. And everybody's different, right? Everybody learns differently through different media. I needed to be in class. I needed to go back and review the videos, but I also went and found books at the bookstore to solidify everything that I needed to know. But again, everybody learns differently.
Yeah, and you'll notice we've got a resources section for every day's outline. These are not only resources that I'll be sharing in class, they may be resources that your fellow students share in the Slack channel, or someone DMs me that and says, hey, this was a really helpful thing that helped me understand this. We've got no problem grabbing a link to that and putting it in the outline so everyone has access to it. So, these are two things that we're about to go through tonight that I have made myself. But that is not, to Karen's point, any resource that you can use to learn is a completely fine resource for us, including each other. So if you see something, feel free to share it, DM it to me, post it in the students channel, and I will try to be good, and the TAs will as well, if something gets shared, to grab that link and throw it in the outline, because at the end of this program, you're going to be like, oh, I remember my one student shared a great resource on this, and I can't remember what it was. So sharing resources, we will try to be pretty good about updating this. Okay, we've got one more logistic thing to get through, and then we are going to take a 15-minute break and dive into technical concepts. Sound good? Cool. All right, so last thing I want to go over in Canvas, there are a lot of links kind of over on that side screen. The couple that you really need to care about, the home screen is going to give you a breakdown of all of our links, and any resources that we've shared. You can also get to almost this exact same information if you go into the modules. And obviously it's a very similar screen. The other things that you probably care about are the assignments, right? So in assignments, you'll see we've already gone in depth about the day code and all of that, but most assignments are due Sunday at 11:59 p.m., right? So even if it doesn't matter if it gets assigned Monday or it gets assigned Thursday, it's going to be due the Sunday, unless it is a resource that we need for the following night's class, right? So you'll see in here, first day setup, it says not available until 8 p.m. Once 8 p.m. rolls around, there will be details in there of what you need to do for that assignment, the type of submission that we are looking for, and also the due date. So you'll see one of them in here is for April 3rd, right? So that means this isn't due until Sunday. You could turn it in tomorrow if you wanted to, or you could turn it in Sunday. Or if you're like, I'm swamped at work, I'm not going to be able to get to this until Tuesday, still turn it in on Tuesday, because if you have late assignments come in, I will still grade them. I will still give you feedback on them. And then I'll go back in and update your weekly score and say, hey, they were below expectations, but they got all their assignments in Monday evening and they all look great. So I'll go back and update your weekly score and say, hey, you're meeting all expectations now. So even though the due date is here, it's not a hard cutoff. and Canvas will let you go in and either resubmit your homework or submit it late, and there's no penalty for submitting late. So pay attention to due dates. I will try to be very good in here. Call me out on due dates if you say, hey, I thought you said this was going to be due at the end of the week, but it's oddly due tomorrow at noon. Let me know, because chances are I probably made a mistake in posting that. But these assignments, you should be able to see them. But when you go to open them, it won't give you the details of them until 8 o'clock. Home is a good rundown of everything. Assignments is where you want to be spending a lot of time. And then the module section is the other third section that really matters in this. We may lean into Canvas a little bit more. For example, we are taking attendance in Canvas for the first time this cohort. But all of these other sections, we probably won't be using a ton until we get a little bit more comfortable with Canvas and understand assignments and all of that stuff. With that said, you should be able to see your weekly feedback score in this section, as well as checking your attendance. But grades is also probably going to be a worthwhile thing for you to come in and kind of see your scores and all of that kind of stuff. Discussions, people, files, all of that we'll be using Slack or Google Docs for, or some other resource. So I wouldn't worry too much about that section. With all of that said, I am done with all of my logistical work. I will leave it open for Jesse or Karen to see if I missed anything, and open for you guys for questions. Hopefully none of that is a surprise for you guys.
One doing all right? Just checking in. The only thing I have, so I'm noticing there's some outlets for charging. I'm gonna bring a bunch of like outlet adapters and whatnot, and just like spread them all over for next time. So I've noticed a lot of you aren't plugged in. So try to charge your laptop before class if possible. But also plan to bring in a bunch of extension cables so you can charge your laptops too.
Because I said that when we first got here, I pulled mine out because I'm like, oh, I better make sure I have it plugged in.
Yeah, so there are outlets. There is one right here. So if you are running low on power, you kind of readjust as you need to.
I wasn't sure if you still had the bin from.
Yeah, I'm going to bring a bunch for next time. I just forgot to bring them today.
Okay.
So you sign out a Slack on your phone, right? If you want to sign out
I think in the upper left-hand corner.
Yeah, if you hit like the Hack Upstate icon, it'll open up all of your workspaces. Like I have, what do I got? 2, 4, 6. I have 7. So I have like 7 workspaces here.
We are going to take a little break because no one wants to hear me talk about non-technical things for 3 hours straight. So just be back here at like 6:50-ish. Feel free to grab coffee or eat or whatever, and I will be here. So if you have any questions, feel free to just shout them out.
Thanks, Max.
just say I don't have
If you haven't sent the DM to anybody else, nobody has sent one to you, you won't see their name. You could see all of the channels,
I'm gonna send, and I guess Max too, just real quick. I'm gonna send Shauna an email just on like things that we could use some help with just for setup. I think one is the mouse and keyboard not working on this one, and I guess is there anything else? Like, I guess kind of warming here too. With the iPad on the doors are working. I thought there was a temperature control for this room, but
Maybe there could
pretty
be.
warm.
Yeah, it is kind of warm here. I don't know, unless they, and my only other thing is that you can manage, I don't know if they can fit another table in here. I mean,
Yeah.
I know you don't have,
Yeah,
I know,
it's
like,
that squeeze.
Well, it is a tight squeeze, so because there's two tables that you can sit at, but it's like, they're mashed up against each other.
Yeah, if we could get like one more of these tables, I think.
Yeah, I think maybe if we get one more table,
Yeah,
maybe
here.
they can kind of spread out a
Let me
little bit more.
cue it up right now.
I don't know, do you have any?
I almost think, Jesse, if they can't, because I don't know how that all works with like the Zoom and the Android and everything with the TV. But if we have another laptop, and I can bring, like I said, I can bring in my other laptop.
Yeah, I have this one here, but this is a previous student's laptop, and I had to like reset it. But for whatever reason, when I got to the step to create an account, it like wouldn't let me create an account for some reason. So I'm hoping what'll best case scenario, Karen, like what we'll do is just bring this in for like every TA instructor that comes in sees this as like the when he's obviously
I
on
would-
comes he'll plug in too.
Yeah.
Only thing is like it's gonna take like 4 hours to install this operating system. So for today, if it's right with you, if we can just keep using.
No,
the
that's fine.
laptop.
I don't know.
Tomorrow should be okay.
I was
Or if you want to bring that back up when you have.
Yeah, I will, just in case something goes wrong, and you
Because
don't get that,
yeah, I'm close, but
right.
it's just gonna take a while.
In case you don't get that up and running, I'll bring my CIC just in case
Yeah,
it's tomorrow. So really the only thing that we'll need is like the adapter to plug in.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm gonna keep this here actually. So I'll just keep it right on the table. I'll kind of donate it because I just bought another one as well. So it should be
It might
fine.
not be there when you come back, but.
That's all right. It was like $10.
Yes, it is freezing outside.
Yeah, they was like, I think it's over there. He's like, "Nope." They were talking about this. I should listen to my own self, but then I was like, I don't understand.
Yeah, the maps brings you to like the other side, so like it's kind of confusing. But maybe
I know.
I know. Yeah, it's
Like I put in just South One.
yeah. Yeah, it's kind of confusing. Any other like I guess questions? Or I'll wait for everyone to asking any questions or concerns with the space itself. Like I know it's very warm in here right now, so I think there's a way to control the temperature. You know, especially if it gets warmer in the spring, it might be really hot in here. I was going to ask that. I'll bring in some extension cables. So yeah, I guess anything else that would be helpful or questions or comments, concerns. I run on so late. Yeah. It's fun to have you be here. It's really cool on the other side. Like
Oh, yeah, I
I
know,
just walked
yeah.
over there and it's like 5 degrees cooler.
You have to reset this. You shouldn't have an apple.
Yeah. You try to.
Well, she went through should have had Apple ID. She used.
Yeah, I just did some
so-
research on that too. It looks like there's not too much.
No. You might have to reset her.
Did you send her an article on how to
She's
do
got them, yeah. She's got them both. And I just looked up what to do if you can't reset your password.
Yeah,
And it
so
kind of gives you, it's kind of like runs you through the same thing of you need to log in with your Apple ID, but if you don't have an Apple ID,
Yeah,
you kind of can't.
right. Did you go through like the backup assistant stuff? Like you hold down the power button and.
That's
Yeah.
what she's doing now. She did it twice.
So are you reinstalling the operating system right now, or are you just
No, it's-
trying to reset?
It's not even letting you get into the recording.
Yeah, I can hear it.
It says you're supposed to do it when it's restarted.
Yeah, 'cause I actually just did the same thing. So if you click shut down,
It said you restarted.
yeah, you can just so hold the power button down and just keep so press the power button and just keep holding it down. And yeah, just keep holding it. It'll say a little prompt and say keep holding to go into recovery.
Oh, actually, Jesse, for recovery, start it from the recovery.
Yeah.
Is that what you're trying to do?
Yeah. I think that's the only
If it's a silicon processor, press and hold the power button until the options show up. If it's an Intel processor, you need to Command R.
I think these are all the newest models. So yeah, just keep holding it. Yep, we got it. So just keep holding it, and then yeah, that's the only thing I can think of. I think it's
Yeah. So then it goes through if you're asked for your Apple ID information, if you're asked for your recovery key.
So if you click options,
Yeah, that's some more. Mm-hmm.
Oh, my favorite.
so you can do a couple things from here.
I do too.
Right. Right, double click.
Oh, so it takes you into the terminal.
So what we want to do.
Are you at the?
What about we're starting from Time Machine? Probably not.
Well, I don't think so, but it says if you go, once you see the utilities window, which is options such as restoring from Time Machine, reinstalling macOS, and using disk utility. From the utilities menu in the menu bar, choose terminal.
Okay. Let's try that.
In the terminal window, type yeah.
So, yeah, like the right side. So.
In the
Utilities, terminal.
So in the terminal, it says
So you want
to
to
type reset password. You say reset
I like it.
I actually just did this on the laptop and normally, there should be an option on there to like put in like the previous path or like the one more patches.
I used to eat the fish all the time. That was on there last year and then there's we'll run out of here. Where you traveling from? Walmart. I don't think so. Based on what I'm understanding, at least, like, we just so yeah, if we if you have specific questions that Jason Star all that, so if there are specific things, with my response, and then you can put in the description, and then it comes to
Write it down.
let you know. Yeah, Jason Star, you can actually find it if you want to call if you have Slack or phone or something.
How did I say that?
If you have Slack,
Thank you. No, I just recently.
Make it something easy.
Yeah.
All right. Hopefully we're getting ready to kick back off. We have mostly everyone back as far as I can see. So are we ready to dive in?
Yeah.
Yep. Good. Okay.
Once we're just trying to get a student's laptop all set, and we're waiting on one more student. So another quick minute.
No problem.
Thank you. Already so fast. Oh, good. So now
privileges.
So, what did she really who started?
Yeah. Apple.com to start.
And then you start.
I'd also write that password down.
Did you actually like right now?
I do. I was thinking of like all the hackups sometimes. Yeah. So we technically can give it access, but that's how we give it. Instead, just like that's not get into the bank. But yeah, if it absolutely needed, we can try to see if we can get access to the website. It's pretty sweet. Yeah, like I didn't have like an watch too.
All right, I'm gonna kick it off here. So I am in the week one, day one outline, and down at the bottom there should be a resources section to open up this frameworks, languages, and tools brainstorm. If you click on that and then click on the blue link that pops up right underneath it, everyone should be able to get into this. However, I explicitly set it up to make sure that only students have access to it. So if you find that you do not have access to this sheet in the CIC Slack live stream or channel or in a DM to me, shoot me whatever email account that you use for your Google account, and I will get you added to the group so you can get in and have access to this. So I see a couple of you popping into this. I will still screen share through all of this, but you want to pop yourself into this document and just make sure that you have access on your Google account because this group is the group that we'll be using from this point forward in the cohort. So if you don't have access to it now, you won't for the rest of the cohort. So I see 5 people in it so far. I'll give everyone a minute. The way I got to this week one, day one outline is if we go to canvas.instructure.com and we go to our cohort 3 class and we go over to modules, there is this week one, day one outline. And if you pop that open towards the bottom of the outline, there's that link for the frameworks, languages, and tools brainstorm. Yeah, Stephanie, I can show you that. Go through that one more time. We're going to go to canvas.instructure.com. That should bring us into our dashboard for our courses. We can click on Canvas Careers in Code Cohort 3. That's going to bring us to this. We're going to go over to modules on the left or from the home screen, click into week one, day one outline. That's going to load in our outline. And then if we scroll down to the resources, you should see frameworks, languages, and tools brainstorm. If you click on that once, it will bring up this little pop-up. And if you click on that, it should take you right into the spreadsheet. Awesome. We've got 11 of you in here, so I'm going to assume that most of you are in here. So because the mics are, because the mic is only at the front of the classroom, you're going to have to be a little enthusiastic for this exercise. And when I say enthusiastic, I mean loud. But the point of this exercise is to throw out any language or framework or technical thing that you've heard of, something you've seen in a job description, something that you may know a developer friend of yours uses. You could throw things out from our syllabus. You could throw things out that you've just heard of in the industry. Whatever it is, go ahead and start throwing them out.
HTML.
Awesome. Great start.
JavaScript.
JavaScript. Keep them going.
CSS.
What did you say?
React and SQL.
Thank you.
Go.
Oh, okay.
Rust,
C++.
Vue. Speak up, you guys.
C#.
Great list so far. Any tools that you've heard of? Anything where you're like, I don't know what that is, but I'm gonna put it on the list anyway.
DevOps.
GitHub. Roku.
What was that last one?
Roku.
Heroku.
Great.
Vanilla.
Vanilla.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Lua. Lua.
Sorry.
LUA.
LUA.
Roblox.
Got it. Any other ones?
Java.
Great. No. Bad autocomplete. Okay, there we go.
Linux was another one. Somebody said.
Cocoapods.
UI UX.
Homebrew. .NET. Is that
Absolutely.
Azure. AZURE. Yep. What is it?
Node.js.
Node.js.
Express.
PHP.
Bash. Python.
Got Python.
Already got it.
Atom. ATOM.
Ansible.
What is it?
Ansible.
Jira.
Great list so far. A lot more if you've got
WordPress.
any more. WordPress, good one.
Bootstrap.
Blockly.
What was the
Say
last
it
one?
again.
Google Blocks. Blockly. BLOCKLY.
Someone say Google Docs. We can put that on the list.
Blockly.
Gonna throw a couple big ones out there, like AWS or let's say Django. Any other
Mongo.
big
Flask.
Mongo?
Flask.
Flask, that's a good one. Any others?
Drupal.
Drupal?
Okay.
What was that one?
Scratch.
Spell it.
Scratch. Like scratch your head.
Scratch, thank you. Anything else?
Solid JS.
There are always a few that I have to look up. But
Breathe. JS.
breathe?
Like three, I think, like three stuff. Three JS.
Like that?
So, like the number three.
3JS, he's saying.
Oh, 3. Thank you.
So if you put that React, when we put React there.
Yep.
We got React.
Is React Native different, or is that just a something?
Great question. Sure is.
Angular.
Don't do it.
Quiet from the peanut gallery. Any others that you've heard of?
You said
Like Ember.
inverse?
No, Ember.
Ember, sorry. Ember.
Yep.
Cobol, yeah, COBOL.
Cobol?
Yeah. Basic. Fortran.
Fortran?
Do not feel bad if you have not heard of any of these, by the way. You are not required to hear, this is, we will be targeting only a couple of these on the list, but the reason why we do this exercise is because you hear all of these things that you can do in tech, right? But all these names get thrown around and you're like, okay, what is that, right? Is that a language? So we're going to go in a second and define all of these categories and then go through the list again and assign those categories to them. So we have an idea, hey, yes, this list is really long, but at the end of the day, it all boils down to one of these 5 categories. And that means that I can take one of them out and substitute it for another one in the category, and they do the same exact thing together. And so the point of this exercise is hopefully to give you a little more clarity into, yeah, even though we've got 49, 50 things on this list already, all of them break down into these categories that we can then go through and understand, hey, this is a language and it's a language used in this specific place. And because of that, we can swap it out for another language and it will accomplish the same exact thing.
Just so you guys know, that was me when I started this program. I couldn't have told you any of them what they were. I couldn't even tell you what HTML was. So if you don't know them, don't feel bad. By the time you're done, you'll know them.
Swift.
Swift?
C.
What was the last one?
Objective-C.
Objective-C, that's a good one.
Assembly.
Assembly. Anything else?
Xcode.
Xcode, good one.
Yes.
VS Code.
Spell it.
VS Code.
Oh, VS Code, thank you. Never heard of that one, Karen.
I kind of figured when you asked me to spell it.
Okay, any others before we dive in?
Hey, I'm going to throw out WebStorm.
Sure. All right. So, what if I told you that I had predicted almost all of these on the list and already had categories set up? So, it is completely okay if you don't know this, but does anyone want to take a stab at what the front end is?
User aspect of the website.
The only thing he said was what they react with.
Yeah, you guys are going to really have to be loud for me to hear you. We will figure out a better microphone solution so that I can hear you guys.
Listen,
Yeah, I have a better microphone I bring tomorrow that'll be able to project much better.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah, Max, would it be easier for folks to, they're already on the Zoom, to just unmute themselves and talk directly into the laptop?
Yeah, let's give that a try. Karen, if you don't mind muting your microphone, and then as students have something to say, just go into the Zoom room and go ahead and unmute. And we'll give that a shot. Speaking of which, who wants to take a stab at backend?
Would it be how efficient things are?
Interesting. I don't know where that reverb came from. Whoever.
Gotta maybe make sure that everybody else in the room has their mics muted. It might have just been kind of a bounce back.
Yeah, it looks like everyone that I can see is muted. So if someone wants to try and unmute and give their answer, let's give that a try again. I can't hear anyone, so I'm guessing you might. That only one person unmuting might not work. Because I only see one person unmuting and it's immediately causing the reverb.
On your keyboard, where your sound is.
Check one, check two.
Maybe try muting yourself, Max, and then see if the class can.
Yeah, I have a headphone in, so I know it's definitely not me. But does one person want to try unmuting in the classroom and see if everyone's got their speakers muted? See if that fixes the reverb.
Do one more try.
Okay, that's promising.
I am muted.
What's that?
Okay, wait, hold on.
Yeah, I'm unmuted.
I've got a bad feeling that the one on mute isn't going to work in Zoom. So we might just need to go back to the microphone at the beginning, at the head of the class.
That worked for everyone. Appreciate y'all trying that. Here, do you want to take up? Max, did you hear that? I'm going to bring the Jabra mic tomorrow. I have it with me. I just forgot it in my car. I can go grab it. It'll work better.
Yeah, but there's no way to hook it up because it's an A.
I could try to find an adapter if I have one. But yeah, just yell for today, and then tomorrow I'll have a better mic.
Okay, cool. That works. Sorry, guys. Thank you for working with us. We actually had a video platform that was literally engineered to solve this problem, but they don't have recording set up quite yet. They keep on saying that it's coming soon, so we may actually switch to them, or we may change up how we're doing virtual in-person classes or whatever. But the good news is that I actually have have closed on a house and have a move date in sight. So hopefully you guys won't have to suffer for too long. But I apologize for not being able to be there in person and help you guys get started. But we'll give this a try. Does someone want to loudly exclaim what they think a backend is?
Code and stuff that works with servers, so the stuff that does the magic with the people.
Yep, it tends to work with data and users. Also considered sometimes the cloud. Anything else? All right. How about the database? What is a database? I heard information and storage. Yep. We'll add in the word persistent storage there. Pretty much as simple as it gets down to. We can say normally allows for multiple users. What's a framework? Does anyone have an example of a framework, maybe?
HDMI.
Yeah. UI kit.
Yep, UI kit is a good example of a framework. Bootstrap is another good one. So what are different about frameworks than, say, languages, which I'm realizing I very obviously left off the list.
With frameworks, you can customize them more.
Yeah, so frameworks are kind of a abstraction layer between the raw programming language that allow easier use of pre-built tools, pre-built functions. So basically, a framework is a way to say, hey, I end up making a button every time in my app, and I always have to style my button over and over again. Wouldn't it just be great if there was a framework that had all of these other buttons created, and then I could just drop those in? So frameworks are essentially pre-built tools by other developers to make your tools a little easier to use. Speaking of tools, what's a developer tool?
So
He said Xcode.
Yep, Xcode's a good developer tool. These are things usually used in the development process, the code development process. Let's be a little bit more specific there. Used in the code development process, but not necessarily. I definitely spelled that wrong. So wrong that I didn't even get spell check right on that. Okay, not necessarily after the product shipped to the end user. And so when we consider something shipped, it means deployed or out in the user's hands, right? So developer tools are things that we use in order to debug, in order to make our life easier. But once it's out of the developer tools, chances are the end user isn't going to continue to use that tool. Okay, technical concepts. Technical concepts, I'm just going to try and roll through these just because the mic is a little hard to hear you guys. But technical concept is exactly what it sounds like, right? These are theories or definitions used throughout the development process. Tend to be well, I guess if it's a theory, it's going to be theoretical, so we don't have to include that. Operating system. This is a pretty easy one. You have all used an operating system because you all have a computer in front of you. There are 3 primary operating systems. There is Mac OS, which used to be called OS X. There is obviously Windows, and then Linux, and then a fourth one called Unix as well. In charge of interfacing software with hardware, right? So basically, when we write our code, that's great, but at the end of the day, we need to be able to control our hardware. We need to be able to shut it down. We need to be able to tell it to run our code. And so the operating system is also the includes user interface for all system activities and applications, right? So in addition to doing all of the hardware interaction for us, it's also giving us the start button or our dock down at the bottom or a desktop with a file system or something like that. A standard. So standard is not just a technical thing. Standards exist everywhere. That's why every plug in the US is the same plug. It is just an agreed upon specification that multiple companies or users agree to use. CMS. Does anyone know what CMS stands for?
Content management system.
Bingo.
He said
Content management system. This is a way for non-technical users to update content without having to write HTML. We'll get to examples of CMSs down the road, but very popular category of software. Mobile app should be pretty familiar to everyone. Just an application or program with a user interface that runs on the two primary mobile OS is iOS and Android. Anyone still has a Windows phone, it would be very surprised. But desktop app, same exact thing, right? Application or program doesn't necessarily have to have a UI because it's on desktop, but that runs on major PC, and then Mac OS and Windows are two primary, and then Linux if you really want to add that into the list. Web application. Anyone want to take a stab at that definition? Where's
Browser?
Yep. An application with a user interface that runs in one of the major browsers. That is, at this point, Firefox, Chrome, and Safari. Edge no longer counts to me because they use Chrome under the hood. They made that switch about a year or two ago. And then for web app, I will also note, also may run in mobile browser. Anyone know the difference between a website and a web app? So websites tend to be more static based. They tend to not allow for user input. It's all about just presenting information to the user. A web application tends to take user info, save it into the database, and it's a little bit more interactive, right? So you can think of a good website is New York Times, right? Very static based. The information goes in, the content gets presented. There's not much user interaction. But a good example of a web application would be Facebook, right? Facebook has inputs and you can upload photos and comment on other people's posts. And right, when you're interacting with Facebook, you don't feel like the information is just coming one way at you. You feel like you can engage with it and push up your own involvement in it. So that's the major difference between a website and a web app. And we will very much be starting with web sites and moving our way up to web apps eventually. And then the last thing, programming language, right? And this is a standard way of writing code that the computer is able to execute. Any categories or terms or things that like you wish you had a definition of that are not already on this side of the list?
API.
Great. API. You know what it stands for, anyone? You got it. A standard used to communicate between applications, traditionally between front and back end. Good one to add to the list. Anyone else? All right, let's start knocking through the list. HTML. What category out of these terms best fit HTML?
I heard front end.
Beautiful. That is exactly correct. How about JavaScript?
Language.
Language.
I say developer's tool.
So it's not quite a developer's tool because developer tools tend to not be used in actual production code. So because we're writing our code in JavaScript, that code still runs after we ship the product, right? After the user is using it. So developer tools tend to be more like code editors or debugging tools or things like that. So it's not developer tools, tend to only be used in a piece of the what we call the SDLC or the software development lifecycle, which we will be talking more about later on this week. So this is actually a trick question and a good example of you can use JavaScript in the front end. And why is that? Because JavaScript is this standard language used for across all browsers, right? Safari, Firefox, going back to Internet Explorer, Chrome, all of them use JavaScript. In fact, JavaScript dates back to the initial release of Netscape Navigator to go all the way back. And I believe the inventor of JavaScript was also involved at Netscape very early on. But it's kind of a trick question because in the past couple years, we've also started to use JavaScript in the back end. And we use that using something called Node.js, which we will be diving into momentarily. How about Python? Where does Python fall in the list of terms? Language for sure. Where is it traditionally used?
Back end was the answer.
Back end, and where else? Yep. Frequently used in desktop. It can be used also. I only did 3. I should have done 4. Can also be used in web apps. Okay. CSS. Where is it used?
Front end was another.
Yep. And I think that kind of sums it up. React. Framework. Where is it used?
Front end.
Thank you. And it is, I'm going to give this a language with an asterisk because it does have its own language, but its language is kind of a mix-up of 2 other languages. Frameworks tend to not have their own languages, right? Frameworks tend to be written in certain languages. React happens to be written primarily in JavaScript. But because it has its own little variation of that, I'm going to give it language with a little asterisk for like it's kind of in there. Okay, what is SQL? Does anyone know what SQL stands for? SQL stands for, I've heard it both ways, either standard or structured query language. It is a way to interact with what kind of system?
Database.
Yeah. And it is definitely a language, and I think that's all we can give it. What about Go?
Language.
It is. And where is it used?
Wow.
Well, what was that answer?
In the cloud, he said.
It is used in the cloud. The cloud, we tend to think of anything being used in the cloud as being used in the back end. And you know what? It can be used to build web apps as well. So I'm going to throw that on there. Although most of the things on this list could be used to build a backend. Rust, very much the same thing. I am pretty sure, let me look that up. Rust is primarily used. Just confirming. House. It definitely can be used in the back end. I've never written Rust myself. I believe it can also be used for desktop apps as well. And it can be used for front end tasks, but that gets an asterisk as well. C++, super popular language. It is popular because it is very fast. It is what they consider close to the metal, which means that it compiles and runs very efficiently by the computer. But it is tend to be used for desktop applications only, unless it is paired with another framework. So it tends to be desktop applications. Although it could kind of be used for the cloud, it tends to be desktop class or like bulk data processing. Vue, what is Vue? Where does that fit?
Framework.
It is a framework, and where is that framework used?
Like a guest front end?
It is. Vue is one of the only two major competitors to React. C# is another language. And there is a very popular framework on this list that we will not only get to, but is also used by a lot of Syracuse employers. So later on in the program, we will actually have a week reserved for an add-on module, and I'm hoping that by the time that we get there, we'll actually have a week's worth of curriculum to go down the C# path and learn more about that. It is used definitely in the back end, and it can also be used to make desktop grade apps. DevOps, where does that kind of fit on this list?
I was on the syllabus. That's why I said it.
Technical concepts?
Yes. I would put it under concepts. DevOps is, we actually have an entire class tomorrow spending time looking at different job titles and understanding what this is. DevOps literally stands for developer operations, and it is all about, hey, we've got this code, and the developer wrote it, and it all works for him, but like, how do we get it out to our users? How do we maintain it? How do we get bug reports back in? How do we make sure that it scales to multiple, to thousands and thousands of users? What happens when it works on the developer's operating system, but maybe not necessarily on our server operating system? How do we manage the cloud and make sure that our end users can type in our URL and end up getting to this app? So DevOps is a somewhat new field. It's been around forever, but it's gotten recognition, and it's kind of carved out its own slice of the pie because the cloud has grown so much. We have 2 weeks in our curriculum for DevOps. Nathan Evans, who taught in cohort 2, will be coming back and has years and years of professional developer DevOps experience. So he will be working with you, I think, week 5 or 6, somewhere around there. And then he'll also be coming in later in the program. But I am super glad that Git came up next on the list because Git falls under the umbrella of DevOps. And it's our first one on the list to get this term. Any guesses of what term it would fall under?
Developer tool?
Yep, this is our first developer tool on the list. It is used in any kind of code, front end, back end, desktop, mobile, web applications. It can be used with any language. It is not frequently used with databases, but I have seen it used with databases. Git is the place that we store all of our code and the way that we collaborate on code in teams. So we will definitely be covering Git in both weeks of DevOps. We'll give you an intro to Git kind of earlier on in the program, about a quarter of the way through, a fifth of the way through. And then we will be circling back on Git in the DevOps towards the end of the program and covering some more advanced concepts with that. GitHub is not the same as Git as much as Java is not the same as JavaScript or vice versa. GitHub very much uses Git and powers all of their infrastructure using Git. But GitHub, the simplest way you can think about it is basically if we took Git and put it in the cloud, that is what GitHub provides, is Git hosting essentially. Heroku. What is Heroku?
Same thing.
Karen, could
He
you?
said it.
Yeah, it's definitely a dev tool. They are really, and I'm gonna add another one to this list because I'm just gonna say hosting, and we're gonna say provides servers or cloud resources to store and execute and run code. And that way I can put hosting on this list. Vanilla. Now, when someone said vanilla, were they implying vanilla JavaScript, or is there another vanilla I don't know about?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So vanilla JavaScript is the same as row number 3. When we say vanilla JavaScript, we actually mean JS with no framework. And the reason why we say that is because JavaScript is notorious for having thousands and thousands of frameworks built specifically for it. And so when we say vanilla Java, sometimes we say JavaScript and it's just assumed that you would be using a framework with it. And so we will actually be teaching you JavaScript through vanilla JavaScript first, and then we'll be layering React on top of it, which will be a JavaScript framework. So when we start teaching JavaScript, we will definitely be teaching vanilla JavaScript first. Lua. What is Lua?
He said a language.
It is a language. It looks like it compiles down to C. So I am guessing it is primarily used for either backend or desktop grade apps. I have not used Lua. I have heard of it. So if I am wrong there, feel free to speak up. But it looks like it is used where C is used, which tends to be either desktop or server grade application. Java is a language. It is primarily used on desktop or in backend. Java is an old language. It is a very widely used language. and it is, I wouldn't say legacy, but it is dying a very slow and painful death. With that said, major employers still use Java, and I would not be surprised if 20 years from now, we were still using it. Linux, I believe this is the first one on the list that gets this tag. What is Linux? It sure is. And I will also call it a developer tool, but with an asterisk. Linux has a lot of developer tools built into it, but at the end of the day, you're completely right. It is an operating system through and through. What you may not know is most servers on the internet that are serving content are running Linux. Very, 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 very few servers run Mac OS. There are a fair amount of servers that run Windows. But the reason a majority of servers run Linux is because it's a free and open source operating system, or most variants of it are free. And it's just known for being a very stable operating system that can run for months or even years on end without ever needing to be restarted. Cocoapods is a framework. It is a framework for Objective-C, and it is used in mobile apps. We'll try and pick this up just a little bit because I think we've covered most of them on the list. UI UX. Anyone know what UI UX stands for?
I think
User interface
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah, user interface, user experience. You got it. The X kind of is a curveball, but it's for experience. The difference between UI and UX, UI is everything that the user interacts with and actually sees on the screen. User experience is a broader category that UI fits into, but it may be something, your user experience may require you to call a number to reset your password. And that's a really bad user experience that you wish were just built in to the user interface itself, right? UX could be really wide-ranging. In my other job, I build essentially apps for smart home speakers, and user experience falls into like, hey, how do we talk? What does this come down to? So it is definitely a concept, but user interface and user experience spans all different kinds of applications. Homebrew. Homebrew is a dev tool, and it is used at the operating system level to manage dependencies. So it is a Mac level, it is a Mac application only that allows developers to install other developer tools. .NET is a framework. Yep. And it is used primarily for building web applications. Azure, what does Azure fall under? Yeah.
What language a framework for?
C#. Yeah, C# is, there are all kinds of variants of C. That's why you have C, you have C++, you have C#. But .NET is usually written in C#. There are actually, it is one of the weird frameworks because it can actually be written in more than one language. But C# is by far the dominant language .NET is written in. Azure. Anyone know what Azure is?
Language or framework?
It is neither. It is actually used for web hosting. They may provide developer tools, but Azure is Microsoft's web hosting platform. Node.js. I'm going to actually put language on this. It uses JavaScript. So it is technically also a framework, and it is primarily used for back-end web apps. As is .NET. So I'm gonna put that on there. Okay. Express is definitely a framework. You know, I'm gonna take this off of. Express is a framework that is written in Node.js for the backend. PHP is a language. Where is it primarily used?
Back end.
Backend.
That's what he said.
Yep. And it is primarily used for web apps. Bash. Also known, normally Bash is the default terminal. So I'm just going to add that to this. And that is a developer tool. Atom is a text editor. So that would fall under...
They said dev tool.
Dev tool. Thank you. Sorry that we will get the microphone fixed so I can hear you guys. Ansible is a dev tool that falls under DevOps and is primarily used for managing DevOps. So I'm going to put it under the hosting category. Even though it's not a host itself, it is used for managing hosting. Jira is a project management tool that we didn't actually have on the list. But project management is key for any project, especially for software projects. Jira, Trello is another popular one just used for that. All right, we are really going to go rapid fire through the rest of this list. WordPress is a framework. It is a content management system, and it is written in PHP. Bootstrap is another framework. It is used for front-end work, and it is all with HTML and CSS. Blocky, I have not actually heard of. It looks like it is block-based visual programming languages and editors. Runs in a web browser, resembles the language Scratch. Okay, so it is a language. It is front-end based, and it is yeah, I think we can leave it at that. We'll call it a dev tool only because it's also used for learning how to dev. Google Docs is a dev tool. It's not necessarily programming based or oriented. But it is frequently used by developers to store content. AWS is Amazon Web Services. They are a host for backend stuff, although they could host your front end and pretty much anything. They are the largest web host in the world by far. Django is a framework. It is for creating backend and front end web applications, and it is written in Python. Mongo is one of the two major databases. SQL is the only other major variant. And it tends to be using JavaScript, but that's pretty much it. Flask is a framework for backend, and it uses Python. Drupal is another framework, but it is for a content management system, and it is written in PHP, I'm pretty sure. Scratch, programming language, and it is, I'm going to put it as a dev tool only because it is primarily used for learning how to code. Solid.js is a framework. It is primarily used in the front end, and if I say anything wrong, feel free to interrupt me if you know otherwise. And it is written in JS. Anything with .js is the same. So we'll copy all of that down. React Native is another framework, and not only is it for JS, but it's for creating mobile apps. So the native part of React Native means that it is it's using React concepts to compile code natively down to iOS and Android apps. We won't touch on that a ton, but I'm hoping that we will in our add-on module. Angular is a framework for JS, and it is used for creating front ends. It is one of the three major frameworks used at this point, which is React, Angular, and Vue is picking up steam. Ember is a framework. It is JavaScript based and HTML based, and it is for creating front ends. Ember is falling out of favor for things like React and Vue and Angular, but Ember is still definitely around. Cobalt is an older language. It is primarily used for backend or desktop grade apps. Same for COBOL and Fortran. They are older languages that are not used a ton these days. However, there is still legacy code like the air traffic control that is still running on BASIC and Fortran in addition to COBOL. So whenever I say a legacy language or a dying language, that means they aren't normally picked for new projects today. That does not mean that job demand is completely gone for them. Swift is a language. It is a newer language released by Apple, about 10 years ago, and it is for creating mobile apps using to run on the iOS platform or Mac OS. So it can be used for desktop, just not very frequently used for it. Objective-C is the language it created. It is also for mobile apps, and you can write Mac OS applications using it. Assembly is a language used for very low-level stuff for interacting with the operating system. So I will say interacting with OS. There. Xcode is a dev tool used for creating mobile and desktop apps. Xcode is Apple's own text editor. VS Code is a dev tool that is used for writing code, and so is WebStorm. So Xcode, VS Code, and WebStorm all on the same class of text editor. Okay, you guys are probably bored out of your minds. We're going to take 10 minutes. Then I'm going to have a 10-minute run at the end and let you guys go a little early because I know this is a ton and it's probably pretty boring. But before I let you go, does anyone have questions on this? Does it start to make a little bit more sense of, wow, there's this really long list, but they all kind of cluster down into these categories? Is that helpful? Cool.
Yes.
Great. All right, take a 10-minute break. We will meet back here at 8 o'clock. I've got one more slide to show you guys, but I want you to have a fresh brain to see it. And then I will let you guys go early and stick around and see if you guys have any questions. But take a 10-minute break, stretch your legs, grab some water, and I'll see you guys at 8.
They have some good flavor. That's what I thought it was. Yes.
It shut down, it's like you couldn't top there and all that. So like part of the East Coast.
So one day,
Yeah.
But that's how they would let us go, we could go in and look at, the people were making calls and.
Yeah.
I don't do that. I didn't like going to see what people were doing. I simply tell them I can't do what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, I didn't like it. But then I looked, I know that the girl, like, she had somebody buddy, she didn't touch the person's file. So, like, what happens? I was looking. She don't have no records of signing in. She don't have no records like saying hi. She ain't got no records of any calls for this time. So she
I used to tell them in the team, like I can go into AWS and I can see when you log in, when you make a call. When you make calls, I used to tell my team, I'm gonna have a hard work by look. I make my job harder. That's what I look like that too. She is. I'm not gonna recommend that. Do what you're supposed to do. Yeah. Even though we was being micromanaged, I had to, but it seems to be like the BTRs so much on the supervisors, and then it was like we had to they wanted us to micromanage them, but then we had to schedule. You know, so it's like, I was like, this is too much. I remember at one point, I mean, when we first started, of course, we were like, this is a lot of money, but after a while, I was like, I need more money. Y'all want me to do more? I need more money.
That's all when it's investigated on the spot.
No, way more work and no more money.
When they broke it down, sorry, if you were the right contact line. Top of case investigators got the same thing.
It's like you shoot up to quick seal.
Case investigators make the same money.
Right.
45?
It was, and then
the case investigation supervisor got 47.
They pushed the case investigations right to 47.
Which will make more. No, I really feel like y'all should have got like.
I thought it would be like 60, 50 something because they jumped from.
The amount of work that was like this spreadsheet. When I came over, I was like, contact us over the case investigation. I'm like, y'all go.
I didn't want to go to case investigation. I didn't want to work with the people. I didn't want to go, but it was getting down to the wire.
I actually like case investigating with the contact because I thought with contact person, people were more like, I don't really gotta, how do I gotta do this? But when you case investigate, like, no, you have to. Like,
you as far as
like dealing with the actual people.
Yeah. I'm saying dealing with the
the overhead.
The manager.
But another way to put it is out and it's stopping and I definitely think it's strong as that.
Oh, yeah. You gonna go back?
No.
I'll go back first.
That's what I'm saying. I'm gonna go back and make phone calls. I wouldn't come back as a supervisor. I would tell them I'll come back and I'll make calls.
I wouldn't go back only because I feel like at this point I've taken a permanent position. So whatever that is my permanent position.
Oh, right.
To go work for something that's not guaranteed. Like
I'm overeating and stuff like that. I would definitely go back. Only part time. Huh? Nah, I set up a Uber Eats, Instant Card,
Oh, okay. Well, then I'm not just baby, and it takes me on to do everything. I'm enjoying my time.
You get paid for 18 hours, no matter how much you put out. But when you put out, you still get like your schedule and your mileage. All those extra. You just sitting there doing nothing for an hour. I'm still guaranteed to make $18.
It's not.
I used to like, I did lift one. My daughter was going to college, so I didn't have to do a little bit. Yeah, and I actually like that. They wanted to work a lot more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like realize.
Yeah.
That's the best way to get like late right. So like if you tell somebody, listen, don't call me unless you got X amount of dollars, right? Then you get there, oh, I got $475. Well, what happened to the $50? Oh, the other person left. I didn't come with you. So with Uber Eats, if you go somewhere and something happened, then they say, oh, well, we'll give you the $3. I didn't come way across the country to get the $3. It was a $15, $20 the transaction.
My mom did work. And she made the phone say that she wants more to come up here. She like, man, they don't need it. It's a $2-3 orders. I can back.
Oh, there's I care for you, like why?
Yeah. When they do that stuff, like, why would I get an order from the mall and I live all the way in Ball? No.
all night. But the place it was, the delivery was campus was. I was a traveling car, and I was weird. I'm supposed to drive this home. I said, I'm not about to drive this car home. See me a lot out here, late at night, they probably got guns or something.
They have the people in the store now.
They do too, so you can either do deliveries or you can do both. But a lot of the time, you know, you see on that, you say shopping in. And then the time they want to skip. I know.
All right, all that. And the way the gas is set up right now, I think staying in the house is.
Amazon. Don't have that feel, so it's like sorry, I have to go to
I working 29, I was working 29 hours, or whatever, 29 hours.
Oh, the 29 hours for the plan. It's still good.
I think I'm.
Right, so actually 29.
29.
It was more than unemployment.
I love it. I mean, kids are working. I really want to like.
Right, that's my thing. I was a supervisor for a year, so I'm glad I could put that on my resume, but that has.
I got some those two work but I know that's not what you
Also, you could be, look into it. There's, you have a really for church. $5.99. I did it today. I did it today.
I did it with the lady. I did it with the lady I spoke with.
I said yes without any meeting. The lady told me that was the best answer. So she could, I wasn't gonna go. But I was in my mind, because it's 5:30, so it's like I told them I was available for the feminine or the so whatever you want me to do, you can find it really good.
I'll tell them to make a lemonade. Nice food.
Right.
Offer your services.
I don't know that I was that I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna go. I can't wait more. I should be close to $30.
When she asked me about that thing, I told her $35. Like, you know, so I was hearing it, but I'm like, oh, okay, $27. Make 20, 24, 20.
I told her 20.
I'm not, now, see, now that I was very unreasonable. But you know what I did? I said to myself, I just want to be able to, you know, same thing. We got that email Thursday night, and I got the link to this Friday morning. Right, but I was like, in my mind, I'm like, okay, be careful with the paperwork. And I'm like, and I was, then I'm starting to look at
All right, let's try and get everyone back in. I've got one more slide to go through with you, and then you should be good for the evening. So give everyone just one more minute to settle in, and then we'll dive in.
Yeah, I want to go back to my house with my room wall.
All right, let's go ahead and dive back in. So we went through that long list, right? And your head's probably swimming of, 60 things on that list, and we got them all down into categories, but like that still might not help you, right? Like you've got the list all together. What does that actually mean? How does this all fit together, right? And so I put together this little diagram, and the idea here is to keep in mind you're not going to be learning all of these concepts. Yeah.
There's no diagram. It's just a black screen.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to talk through it in a second, but thank you.
Okay. Well, I mean, you're saying there's a diagram to them, and all they're seeing is a black screen.
No, sorry. I'm going to talk through the diagram as we go through it so you understand the puzzle pieces. But before I do, I just want to reiterate here that you're going to learn all of this over the next 24 weeks, right? So we're not throwing this all your way. The idea here is that we just give you the context so that you know as you're learning all of these pieces, how they all fit together, right? Because when you get to the end of this, you're going to have a capstone and a classroom project where you can't believe you have built all of that. And so the idea here is for us to just kind of make sure you understand where these pieces go together, because it's very easy to lose the forest through the trees, right? And so all of these individual concepts are the trees. But this overall diagram together is the forest, and that forest is how to build a web application. So we all start with the front end, right? And there are a bunch of different categories in the front end, but the only other major part to a web application, other than the front end, is obviously the back end, right? And so when we think about the front end, that's pretty much anything on the user experience side. That's what the user's interacting with. And anything on the back-end side is the data and the servers and kind of what's happening behind the scenes. So in our front end, almost pretty much everything runs in the web browser. Our web browser is rendering our HTML, hypertext markup language. It is using our cascading style sheets, CSS, to style all of that HTML. And then it is using our JavaScript to make that page interactive. And it may even be using React, which is a JavaScript framework, in order to build a web app, right? It just makes it easier for us to update that data in the web browser. And that's pretty much the entire front end. Now, the front end interacts with the back end. And on the back end, we have this API server. And this is specifically the stack that you're learning in this bootcamp. So if you say, well, Max, you said that Node.js was a back-end server, does that mean that I could use Python instead? And the answer is absolutely. Or you could use Ruby, or you could use PHP. Those are all very popular alternatives. But what we're teaching you in this course is all JavaScript all over the place, so that when you have those concepts down, you're able to then go and apply them to what other jobs may be using. Now, you could find a job that's using JavaScript, and that's completely fine. But for our curriculum in particular, we're teaching you all of these concepts in JavaScript, in Node.js, in Express. And then on the back end, we also have our database server, and we will be teaching SQL in this course. And then to pull it all together, we have the front end talking to the back end over an API, an application programming interface. And it happens to use JSON. Most of them do, which is stands for JavaScript Object Notation, but it's basically just the standard that we use to make sure that we can read data coming from the back end into the front end and vice versa. So I know that was a quick run through of everything, but does this help kind of start piecing it together, right? Because it's easy to look at words on the screen, but this is how you are going to be spending your next 24 weeks, right? And starting as early as next week, we are going to be diving into like, hey, let's get a website built. Let's actually go rebuild the Netflix homepage. Let's go build an Amazon product page. And we'll also be starting to think outside of that box, right? And how do we start an application from scratch? What are the requirements of the application? How do we design before we get to code? And so all of that is what is coming up next. But this is kind of the 1,000-foot view, right? This is looking at the whole forest and understanding that once we piece everything together on the screen, we're able to make a fully functional web application. So that's hopefully just getting you a little excited about what's coming. The only other note that I have for you is your assignment should be live in Canvas. Those assignments, you can expect anywhere from 15 minutes to 45 minutes of homework a night. Some nights will be easier, some nights will be harder. When we get into coding, a lot of it will be coding along. And if you're caught up to everything that we did in class, you won't have any homework. That will come kind of later on in the program. But I have a couple easy assignments in there for you now just to kind of get started, get familiar with Canvas and submitting things, and also a reading assignment to prep for tomorrow's class. For all of that said, I will shut up now. I am sorry for all the mic issues. We have a better mic tomorrow that we will try and set up so I can hear you guys and make it a little bit easier to engage. But I will stick around, ending class 20 minutes early, but feel free to hang out and ask me any questions or socialize with each other or get started on the homework before you head home. That's all I have for you.